Greetings, everybody. How we doing today? I am Mark Corrett, retired Command Sergeant Major with AskTop.net, sponsored by MentorMilitary.com. And today we have the honor and pleasure to speak with a great leader, Master Sergeant Richard Green. Master Sergeant, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I'm Richard Green, better known as Oz. I am from a small town called Mulberry, Florida. Come from a big family, very humble beginnings, and I'm a guy who got lucky a couple times. I got lucky enough to score high enough on the ASVAB to be a soldier. Got lucky enough to marry this beautiful lady that I call my wife, and right now I just got lucky enough again to be a Master Sergeant in the greatest military on the face of the planet. So I'm ecstatic.
Awesome. How'd you get the nickname Oz?
Oz. So over at the freestyle platform, when we first started out, I was always the guy in the back doing the technical stuff, like setting up the show and the green screens and all of that good stuff. And I was always the guy in the back pushing the buttons. So Sergeant Major Estrada dubbed me Oz. He was like, hey, Green isn't here, things aren't going to happen, and the name just stuck. I liked it, and I ran with it.
Awesome. So today what we're going to do is we're going to share lessons learned in leadership, because the senior leaders, the way that I look at it, every day somebody retires, and when they retire we lose a volume of lessons learned that are never captured. You're still on active duty and you're an engineer?
I'm a mechanic. I'm a 91 Zulu.
What is that?
Mechanic, 91 Zulu.
Oh, 91 Zulu. You are a fellow ordnance soldier.
I am. Go Ordnance.
Go Ordnance. All right, so the first question, I want you to tell me about a person and a situation in which a leader added the most value to your professional and personal life.
The leader that added the most value was Master Sergeant retired Raymond Wilson. When I was a PFC, I got to Fort Bragg, and I had an incident where I flipped my vehicle traveling 75 miles an hour. Shipped from replacement to the 82nd Signal Battalion, and that Friday, I flipped my truck. Well, long story short, wrecked the truck. I get back to my room. I'm depressed. I'm disgusted with the situation that had turned, because I'm from a very poor family. I don't have money to get another vehicle. And then walks Staff Sergeant Wilson. Staff Sergeant Wilson comes into the room, and he's not my platoon sergeant. He's not in my company. He's just an NCO. He comes in and he says, hey, son, how are you doing? You don't know me, but I'm Staff Sergeant Wilson, and I understand that you've been in an accident. He said, well, I tell you what, I need you to get plenty of rest. Make sure you drink plenty of fluids. You're going to be sore in the morning. And from this point forward, I'm going to take care of you. That Staff Sergeant took care of me from the time that I was a PFC all the way until present. He has looked out for me. He's mentored me. On my personal time, he's taking care of me, giving me advice and stuff like that. From professional time, he's there. Even when we would jump out of airplanes, when I first got here, I was afraid. Staff Sergeant Wilson always found a way to get there and made sure I got through what I had to get through.
So this guy wasn't even in your chain of command?
Wasn't in my chain of command at all.
NCO support channel, nothing?
Nothing. He was just a NCO who saw a need, and he filled in the gap.
Wow. So, second question, what's your greatest achievement, and why do you consider it your greatest achievement?
My greatest achievement is being a non-commissioned officer. And the reason that I consider it to be my greatest achievement is because when I was a younger soldier coming up through the ranks, like, I had all of these great leaders, and you wanted to be like them. They were smart, they were strong, they were physically fit, they led everything, and they always had the right answer, or they knew where to go and find it. But as a leader, like, I haven't been able to see things through from cradle to grave. And once I became a first sergeant, that was the first time I was able to see things through cradle to grave. And being able to mentor those my platoon sergeants who were under me, and then watching them take that same information that I had given them and passing it down, and being able to see that go down to the lowest level and remanifest, that was the key to let me know, like, hey, look, this is really worth what we're doing. Like, this is making a difference in our tomorrow's army. And that's why I consider it to be my greatest achievement.
Tell me about your greatest failure and what you learned from it.
My greatest failure, I would say is that when I was younger, I came up in a culture where appointed authority was a really big thing. And that was how you led. You were going to do what you were told to do because you were told to do it, not because of influence, not because of buy-in, but just because we told you to do it. And if you didn't, there were going to be consequences. So I led that way for a very long time. When I became a staff sergeant, it became a problem. Now I can't lead with positional authority. Now I have to lead with influence. Well, I went into the motor pool from being a platoon sergeant. And when I went into the motor pool, I was confronted by a CW3, Chief Cook. And Chief Cook had a conversation with me that changed my entire life. And what he told me was, he said, Staff Sergeant Green, I want you down here in the motor pool, but I don't need any more leaders. And I said, well, Chief, I'm a mechanic. I need to work in the motor pool. He said, well, I got it, but I don't need leaders. If you come down here to work, you're going to be a worker. And I'm like, Chief, that's fine. You know, I'll work, I'll do whatever. You know, I'll turn wrenches. It doesn't matter to me. He responded with, well, there's one more problem. He said, we don't lead the way that you lead in the motor pool. We don't yell at our soldiers. We don't smoke them. We don't do all of that stuff. And my response to him was, well, Chief, you know, no one likes the way that I do things, but they love my results. My soldiers are the smartest. My soldiers are the strongest. My soldiers get the best PT scores. They look the best. They're disciplined. He said, yeah, you're right. But think about it like this. Is there a way that you can lead without having everybody hate you? And that point, I felt that that was my biggest failure, was the way that I was leading with positional authority instead of leading with influence. And there were situations that transpired. I still didn't get it at that moment, but there were situations that transpired where I went back and I had to think on what Chief Cook told me. Is there a way that you can lead without having everyone hate you? And he was absolutely right, by leading with influence versus appointed authority.
Outstanding. You know, that's one of the biggest things we can do as leaders is influence people to think differently and think critically in how to do things differently with better results, or achieve significant results, like you said, without being hated, with being a leader that they want to come back to. Tell me about a time in which a leader lost credibility with you, and what was the impact on you?
So the time, and I'm going to speak in general because there was multiple times that this happened, but what I like to refer to it as an immediate credibility killer is when a leader will vocalize or they will show that they fundamentally change who they are based off of the presence of the leader that's there or who's in the actual area. So they act one way around their subordinates, and then when one of their superiors come around, they act completely different. I don't believe that is an effective way to lead. In my opinion, when leaders do that, soldiers lose credibility with them. They don't trust them. They feel that if, you know, something were to happen, that leader would not have their back. That leader may tell them to do something, and because they're afraid of what the consequences are going to be, they're not going to stand up and say, hey, I told that soldier to do that. And they're going to take the blame. They're going to pass the buck to the soldier and slide the soldier under the bus. So for me, that is an immediate credibility killer. And I've seen this happen a couple times, and we deal with it, you know, accordingly. But that is the one thing that I just cannot deal with. And I have conversations with those leaders. You don't change because of your boss. You may change how you communicate with that person, but you don't fundamentally change who you are and how you operate.
Well, you know, you said something in that piece that a leader told me once, and that was hog the blame and share the glory. And that had a big impact on me. You know, when somebody came up and said, who did this? What happened? It's like, hey, it's my fault. I'm responsible. Because in the end, I am. And I get to choose how much pain I share with my subordinate soldiers. I stand between them and that senior leader because that's my job. So yeah, that's powerful. When you look back over your career, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yes. I wish that I had found out about or I wish I had been given the opportunity to go to the Master Resiliency course sooner. It is absolutely a phenomenal program that we have in the Army, which teaches us how to build resiliency. But I feel that it's more than a resiliency course. It's a leadership course because it teaches us, you know, basically how to put the human factor into leadership. And I like to refer to it as the total care process, where we're not just caring about, hey, this is the mission. We're caring about like how is what am I saying or what I'm doing affecting this person as a person. And if I feel that if I had been given those tools earlier, there's a lot of bridges that I may not have burnt. There could have been a lot of more connections made. I could have led with more influence earlier on in my career. Now I'm at the point where like what happened has happened. I'm a big enough leader to apologize when I make mistakes. And as I see those people and who were under my leadership at a younger age, I apologize. I go to them and I say, look, I'm sorry. The way that I led, I could have done that better, but I did the best with what I could. And I'm apologizing to you to let you know that I was wrong and that is unacceptable. And this is not the way that we should lead as leaders.
You know, it's kind of funny you say that because when I look back across my career, I can say that I wish I would influence others better, very similar to what you're saying, because it's kind of like you say youth is wasted on the young. Well, the bad part is I wish I knew then what I know now. It would have totally changed my leadership style. All right. What is the one thing that you want soldiers to walk away with from today's session?
The one thing that I want soldiers to walk away with is this, Mark. Credibility is earned through blood, sweat, and tears because you have to prove that you can do the thing that you said you can do in your profession and life and to your family, everybody. Then once you prove those things, then comes buy-in. Buy-in is bought with credibility. And credibility is like, it's like a piggy bank. Once you have a whole lot of it and you make mistakes, a little bit of change will go out. But once you run out of that change in that proverbial piggy bank, then you don't have buy-in anymore because you're no longer credible. So now we have the buy-in. The very last thing is influence. Influence is gained once you get buy-in. Now that I have influence is a gift. A gift is made to give to others. So I am to use my influence to make other people's life better. That's the purpose of influence. It's not for me to go out here and beat on my chest and say, hey, look at me, I got all of this stuff. Influence is so that you can improve the life of those who you lead. That's the purpose of influence. So if that's what I would like for everybody to take away. Just when you get into a situation, especially when you're a young leader or even if once you're an older leader and you go into a new situation, you have to understand that, hey, look, I got it, that I can do all of these things, but I have to build credibility. Credibility is like a credit card. A credit company is not going to give you credit until you build good credit. So I have to build that credibility. Once I build that credibility and I prove myself, then I can get buy-in. The more buy-in that I have, the more influence that I have.
Again, I use the word powerful. Do you have an example of how that was applied in your career?
Absolutely. So we're ordnance soldiers, so I'll just speak from that standpoint. As an ordnance soldier working in maneuver units, a lot of times the things you say are discredited because you don't have a specific identifier qualification. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're talking about, but until you put time in, like through sticks lanes and winning competitions and marksmanship scores and your squad coming in as the top squad, until you do all of those things, or even, i.e. going out and get a Ranger tab. I don't have a Ranger tab. I'm just using that as an example. But until you go out and do those things, you won't be creditable. Once you become credible and you get buy-in because you've done these things, now people will say, hey, you know what? This person knows what they're talking about. They've been in this field. They've done these things. I've seen them do X, Y, and Z. So I'm giving them my buy-in. By me following them, other people are going to say like, hey, if this person is following this person, then they know what they're doing. And then on to the last piece. Like now that I have all of this buy-in from all of these people, that's leverage, is influence. I have influence. Now I can take my influence with the people who are backing me and I can make your life better by having things that I can do for you. Whether that be, getting you into a door that you wouldn't be able to get into because you just didn't have access.
When I hear the things that you're talking about, I look back on my career. And it's amazing how as leaders, I think we all share a lot of things in common. At least if you're a leader that reflects on what you've done and where you want to go and where you want to take others. As we start to wrap up today, let me give you the floor and you tell me what you want to talk about.
Like Mark, like we talked about, in the past, I'm very grateful that I was able to have met Chief Cook, CW4 retired Chief Cook, because he turned me on to John C. Maxwell. And John C. Maxwell's is the way that he views influence and buy-in and all of these things. The very first John C. Maxwell book that I read was the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. That, on top of our Master Resiliency program that we have, it totally changed how I viewed leadership. The only thing that I can say is that I wish I had gained these tools earlier, because as John C., this guy breaks it down like a shotgun. Like, he is literally my favorite author. Like, the majority of the stuff, like the piggy bank thing I was talking about, I got that from him about credibility. And it's just, I know he's not a soldier, but leadership is universal. It doesn't matter if you're a soldier, you're a civilian. Like, a soldier can literally leave the Army and go into a Fortune 500 company. And if they're leading with influence versus positional authority, they're going to be fine, because they're trying to get buy-in from people. They're not just saying like, hey, I'm a master sergeant or I'm a major and you need to do this because of my rank. They're literally getting buy-in. They're using influence to get things done. They're not trying to like use their appointed authority to force people into doing things, because that's the problem. That's the problem. Once you transition, no one cares about your rank. No one cares that you served 20 or 30 years in the military. The only thing they care about is what you can do, the relationships that you build, and how can you help the organization that you're a part of? How do you fit into this organization? That's the only thing that they care about. And a lot of soldiers transition and they don't get that, and they're stuck. And they're stuck. I'm trying to figure out, like, why doesn't anybody care? It's not that they don't care. It's just that you are used to leading with appointed authority instead of influence and getting buy-in.
A lot of leaders choose to lead through that authority piece. And like you said, it's not that they're bad leaders. It's that at that point in time, they don't know any better. And I think all of us go through that phase to some degree. Mm-hmm. Now, ladies and gentlemen, team, we've been talking to Master Sergeant Richard Green, and he is one of the hosts of Unmuted. And you'll probably see him on Facebook Live a lot. And why don't you go ahead and make a plug for Unmuted, because that's where I met you, and I was very impressed with the show you and Halliburton and the rest of that team does.
So that is definitely my family. They got me started with all of this. So we're over at Freestyle Every Day for Everybody. Freestyle for every day for everybody, and we have a live page as well. We do a show on Fridays. Normally we do one on Fridays. Then we have the Mega Hua show on Saturday as well. I have my channel, which is Let's Talk About It. You can find me on Let's Talk About It on Facebook. You can find me on Let's Talk About It on YouTube, and also Let's Talk About It on any podcast channel. And then also on Instagram, I have a page where I put the rest of my stuff as well. That's called Real Talk and Motivation.
All right, so now you just threw a curveball at me and told me you got another channel. I'm not even subscribed to it. So tell me about Let's Talk About It.
So the whole scheme behind Let's Talk About It is that I want to put positivity back into the world and talk about leadership. But I want to talk about leadership from an aspect that we don't normally get it. I don't want to use any regulations. I'm using strictly the things that I've learned from coming through the ranks and what I read in the books and the stuff that I get from great individuals like yourself and Sergeant Major Halliburton and Sergeant Major Estrada. I take all of that stuff and I put it together, and I try to do a 10-minute clip 5 days a week so people can come and get some positivity and some tips they can put in their tool bag on leadership.
Man, I know what it takes to produce a video. And sometimes I do 4 in a day and schedule them, but 5 a week? Dude,
some days I do too. Like I'll you just go through the day and you're feeling so good and you hear something that's very inspirational, you're like, you know what? I got to share this with everybody. I can't keep it to myself. Somebody else has to hear this great thing that I just heard, and that's the driving force behind it. So some days I do too. Like I started in April, and I want to say from April to now, I've done like 150 videos, and I'm not running out of steam.
Wow, you say that. I started in April as well, and I think I'm up to 50 videos. 150 videos, dude.
Yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
When COVID was going on, there was days that I would do like 2 a day. I would do 1 in the morning. It's just, leadership is so like, I'm so excited about it. It's like, I want to get this information out there to our junior soldiers. I don't want to like hold on to this stuff. Like they say, the graveyard is full of knowledge, and I wish I had. I don't want that.
Absolutely.
I want to get that information out there to our junior soldiers and anybody that wants to listen to it, civilian counterparts, anybody. I just want to get it out there in the world.
Well, when I transitioned, I found that the civilian world was a lot like the military world, and that leadership worked no matter where you were. You just had to be approachable, willing to solve problems, willing to listen. But I missed the soldiers. And so that's why I started Mentor Military YouTube, was to share lessons learned, to get information out there that we just don't typically share for one reason or another. Sometimes you don't run into those incidents until later on in your career, and you're like, I wish I would have known, because that piece of information eluded me when I needed it. So you got anything to say as we wrap up?
I want to add to what you just said. A lot of times in life, like, we'll get information from leaders. Like I talked about Chief Cook. Chief Cook was so far ahead of his time when it came to leadership that he was giving us things that we weren't prepared to use yet. But the thing I'm gonna say is this: is like, even if you think somebody's not prepared for what you're giving them, give it to them anyway. And then down the road, when they're prepared to receive it, they'll receive it and they'll be able to use it then. So don't look at somebody's station or their rank and say, like, you can't handle this. Give it to them anyway, and just let them grow. And eventually they'll grow into it and they'll be able to use it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, team, today we've had the pleasure of talking with Master Sergeant Richard Oz Green, the man behind the curtain for Unmuted. And he shared with us some valuable lessons learned. I hope you walk away with something that not only you can use, but you can share with your soldiers and other members of your team. Appreciate it if you could reach down and hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment about today's episode or a subject you'd like to hear about in the future. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.